But that gets into our final question, right? Walker, if you want to take it away. I know this
Who's
has
that?
been something on your
The
mind.
piano
Piano,
man.
the piano
No,
man
yeah,
with his
yeah.
question.
No, it really is. I mean, I feel like I always bring this up. If I don't know if I brought this up on the podcast, but we have this discussion a lot, and it's basically you call yourself a Christian, right? That you've agreed to follow the rules that Christ has deemed for you. Like you say, yes, I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and I'm willing to follow what He tells me to do. And then we turn around, and then we say, well, in order to be really a Christian, you have to follow all these things that people said you have to do that aren't Jesus. And I do understand the argument that Peter he was like, oh, Peter, here's the keys to the kingdom. Like obviously he had some power to establish some rules. Okay, so there is that argument, but ultimately, if you only followed what Jesus said and the rules that are written down that Jesus said, right? Would you be able to make it to heaven? Because I believe that you would be able to, but then I can turn around sometimes and say, well, Paul says to do this, and if you don't do this, you're a sinner. And they're like, is that actually okay to do? I don't know. That's the question.
You want to go
Okay.
first?
Sure. I mean, to answer the first part of that, like, could you just follow what Jesus said and be like, if all you did was find like the book of Matthew laying on the ground, right? And you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do what this guy said.
Right.
Like, yeah, I feel like you could definitely go to heaven. Um, as far as the rest of it, so I don't know. This is something that's been on my mind a lot the last few months. So like, if in fact Jesus sent the apostles to come spread the word, right? As we read that he did, then as you said, they have some kind of authority to establish the the actual
Right.
church. And then if we're to believe that Jesus literally stopped and spoke to Paul on the road to Damascus, which we're told in Acts, um, then it would stand to reason that these are also things that we should be doing. I think where the water gets muddy sometimes is when people pretend that everything Paul ever said was like his divine authority, whereas reality, like it's just a lot of it's just like, hey, this is my opinion, this is what I think, and people will be like, oh, no, 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 he only meant that about literally just the next sentence he said when he said like, this is my opinion. But like, I don't know, just it doesn't mean any of Paul's ideas are bad at all. Like they're certainly not. And without Paul, like there would be a lot of confusion, I think, with how things were to be run. And so I think that there's a great deal of importance on that. But I mean, when in doubt, just do what Jesus said.
Yeah, I think the book of Corinthians, First Corinthians, is grossly like overanalyzed at times. Like you talk about the church building, there's certain things that I think that we don't do, that we just completely ignore because of a few verses that Paul maybe are taking out of context. And I think even in those verses, what he said are still truth, but like how extreme are we really to take it? I go back to the actual Bible for this question though. Acts 8, the Ethiopian eunuch was saved because I mean he says so Philip ran to him and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and said, "Did you understand what you're reading? How can I unless someone guides me?" He invited Philip to come with him, and then you know the rest, right? He says, "Where's some water that can be baptized?" So he just tells him that the prophecy in Isaiah was fulfilled. tells him the story of Jesus, and he was baptized and saved. What do we tell everybody who comes to church? If you sit and believe and you understand that Jesus is the Son of God, you can be baptized. And if you're baptized, if you get baptized and you die like 10 seconds later, you're going to go to heaven, right?
Right. But Jesus himself did say to do that as well. It's not like Paul was like, oh, you need to do this thing.
Well,
Right.
the first
But
thing we say when someone comes to church is put on a mask. But then after that,
and sit 2 rows apart, or register for church. Yeah, Jesus needed an email for us to. I gotta know if you're coming to this side of the mountain. But I think we can be saved. We can be baptized on just the words of Christ. But if we, uh, uh, as we live, and we have the Bible, and we can read the scriptures and understand it, and establish ourselves in the church, I do think that we are supposed to follow the guidelines of the rest of the Bible, because otherwise, what would be the point of the Old Testament? Which I've been reading this year, and it's been really enlightening, some of the stuff that's in there. So that's what I think. You can be saved, and I think that, in that circumstance where it's like, if you just read the Gospels, then you got baptized on your way home, you got in a car wreck and died, would you go to heaven? Yeah, probably, right? But I think if you've established yourself as a Christian, then the epistles and the rest of the Bible really does matter to your salvation. And if you ignore that, then you're willingly ignoring it. And I think that can and probably would be a problem. That would be my answer.
Yeah. Well, so we say, like, to me, I truly believe that if you follow Jesus' words, then you can be saved. Like, I truly 100% believe that. Now, I like to conservatively read the Bible, and I do believe that the other apostles are trying to give you the guidelines to, like, follow Christ. And so I will follow what they say. Where I have an issue is condemning someone else on the basis of what someone not Christ said. Like, I'm going to do that. Like, that's it, just out of principle of trying to, I guess, be safe, even though God doesn't want you to just, like, be safe. But that really is kind of the principle I adhere to when it comes to the Bible. Is like, if it says it, I'm going to just do it. But I do have an issue with, I guess, the denominational Church of Christ, the non-denominational denomination of the Church of Christ. we often condemn other people and other churches for things that Jesus didn't say anything about. And I have a problem with it, I think.
But at that point,
I'm
we're
still
just
talking through it. I'm talking through it, but I think I have a problem with that.
Well, at that point, we're talking about like modern day Pharisees, right?
Right. There's nothing wrong with being a Pharisee and doing what the Pharisees said to do. The problem is when you start saying, "Oh, you have to do this to be saved." That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Well, or the idea that if you aren't XYZ, you're 100% going to hell. I don't think we can
Right.
make that determination.
Right.
But there are people who do that.
Exactly. And that's a big issue to me. Like, it's like, well, if they follow what Jesus said, they should be able to be saved. Like, we shouldn't be saying this other stuff. Okay, sorry. I've been talking too much.
You're fine. JBM, you have any other thoughts on it? Or do you need Tim Tebow?
I think Tim would be helpful in this situation. But no, I don't think I have any other thoughts. That's pretty much where I'm at this present juncture. Again, as was noted, this is something that's been discussed. I think a lot more probably off air than on air with this crew, but it's something that I don't know. I am kind of battling through myself with regards to, like, okay, like I sometimes I wonder, like, okay, what would Christianity look like if literally all we have was the Gospels? Like, what would we be doing? Because
A lot different.
yeah, it would be a lot different. And I don't know. I mean, Jesus' entire life was about, like, how we should treat other people. And many times now, our entire life becomes about like how we should run worship service or something. I don't know. Like it just seems like the emphasis has kind of moved off a little bit. And I don't think that's any one individual's fault by any means, but like we just, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of times where we could be focusing on like, hey, what, like literally what would Jesus do in a situation where like, well, let's go see what Paul or Peter said, which is great. That's good information. But like, what did Jesus actually say about a topic? And I think,
Right.
I don't know.
So I will say this. So if you're like listening to this, and I'm not meaning to like do a plug here, but you heard like I've been thinking about this a lot. JB has been thinking about this a lot. I'm sure Midnight Mark's been thinking about it as well.
Yeah.
If you have some opinions on this, we would love to hear your opinions because
Yeah.
we think about it. So if you have any thoughts on
True.
it, send it our way.
Yeah. We would love to hear if people have a strong opinion on certain topics. We'd love to hear that too, because we're just trying to better ourselves. Part of the reason we do this is a goof off, but the other part is because we really want to learn more. And I know that since we've been doing this podcast, since we've been talking more about this, there's a lot of things that I would have never questioned that I do now, and I think it's good for me. And I think all those things that you said before, JBM, are right. I mean, Jesus did tell the apostles to do that stuff, right? I mean, he said, go spread what you've been taught. And there's only a certain amount that we have of Jesus. He only preached for a certain amount of time. And so I think a lot of the structure of our church is basically because of Peter and Paul, right? If they didn't exist, our structure would like be way different. So I think that is important. I think that is what Jesus wanted them to do. Create a structure for for my church. But some of the other stuff, I think you're right. There's probably, but anyways. Anything else? Anybody else?